inserting chips in the human body, and in particular inside the human brain, in order to actually work hand in hand, brain in hand with your computer. Is this something that is possible? First of all, let's start with that, John. Definitely possible, right? And probable. Is that what we're hearing?
We are indeed hearing that.
Yeah.
You know, whether we live to see it or not, it's being planned, and it is inevitable, and it's multi-purposed as well.
Yeah.
And so, and it could be right around the corner with the way things move. But, you know, the obvious benefits are being able to connect with the Internet, and having, you know, to not remember passwords.
Right.
On the other hand, being able to be traced anywhere in the world at any time is certainly scary to people.
I can't help but think that Anthony Weiner would be the first in line to get this chip. I just can't help but think that because while you talk about things that can be used in a positive way, this can also be used in a very negative way, whether it's a dirty negative way, whether it is nefarious. I mean, that's got to be thought of, right?
It does. And, you know, when you consider the ethics and impacts, consequences, we're still debating consequences from the Industrial Revolution, you know, 140, 50 years ago. Here we are having to play catch-up as the technology moves so quickly, but the ethics and the implications and the dangerous consequences, you know, we're left then holding the bag trying to figure out what it all means.
So you're actually asking people how far would they be willing to go with this and what their thoughts are. What are we finding?
Well, what we're finding is that most people aren't ready for it yet, but some are, clearly. And, you know, when you consider particularly, you know, the attitudes of young people toward it, who are significantly higher than folks, you know, who are over 50 and then over 65 years of age, what you see is that as humans, we are slowly, you know, adjusting to these wild new technologies, and that is the future.
Yeah. Are younger people more apt to accept something like this?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. And for a variety of reasons. You know, one is it is the next wave of technology. Mm-hmm. The other is as they have children, or as medical science develops, you know, the opportunity then to get out of their genetic code, you know, certain predispositions to diseases, or not, you know, in the case of children, you know, to reproduce designer babies, but at least to protect the future health of those babies.
Elon Musk, Stephen Hawking, both have come out and said that this type of what we're talking about, this artificial intelligence, they believe might very well pose the greatest threat to humanity in the history of time. What do you think of that?
I do. I think of that, and I think about it a lot. You know, just finished a wonderful book, Sapiens, and the author there has the last chapter entitled "The End of Humanity." That artificial intelligence has the potential to create whole new beings, and that human beings, who have dominated the earth now for tens of thousands of years, you know, may be an extinct species. I mean, that's a wild thing to consider, except if you read the long-term history of humans on the planet and of creatures on the planet, it's something that we have to really take into account.
When I was growing up, I was told if you don't go to college, you'll not be able to compete in the workforce. Mm-hmm. In 30 years, are kids going to be told, if you don't get that chip, they're going to race right around you. You will not be able to compete here. you're going to have to do it. I mean, are we going to be pressured based on, I mean, that's possible, based on trying to be successful?
Bill, that's a good question, and I think it's very possible.
Yeah.
And essentially, it's not a question of being dominant. It's a question, as you raise it, of just being able to keep up.
Right. Interesting.
Or for those companies to sell more chips.
Right, that's a good point.
Made in Utica.
Made in Utica. Michael says, I'm unsure if it'd be barbecue or salt and vinegar. Let that sink in.
Salt and vinegar, absolutely.
Okay, I want to just touch on, let's see, through Twitter, the North Koreans say we're declaring war. The NFL, healthcare. What do you think? And how about your President Trump report card here?
Well, first of all, why did you have to spoil this conversation?
I know, Bill. Jeez,
it was going so well.
I'm speechless. You know, first of all, no one has ever acted on the job like this, words do matter. And I believe that the North Koreans believe that this is an act of war, because they don't play by the same rules either.
Right.
And so, essentially, when the president waits to go to the United Nations and calls the leader of another country, as crazy as he is, calls him Rocket Man and belittles him and says, well, don't worry about him. He's not going to be around much longer. And if they take one step towards this, we're going to obliterate them from the earth. That's really dangerous talk and not comforting to America's allies. That's one piece of it. The NFL thing, Bill, it's all about race. It's not about the flag. It is all about race. The visual is there for those who don't believe it. Two major league sports, predominantly populated by persons of color, and the president is going after them and cheering on audiences who have stopped going to the games. What he's done is he's basically fomenting a race war that may very well backfire.
Yeah.
The last few days we've seen, I think, some encouraging developments by the players, the owners, the folks who are in the business of major league sports, the players from the two leagues, the NBA and the NFL, actually coming out in support of each other, and maybe a new conversation. But this is all so gratuitous. Why this and why now?
Yeah. What about the possibility that the president is just brilliant and he's taken the attention and moved it way over here when he doesn't want people focusing on A, B, or C, which could possibly be positive for the country? I've heard that theory. What do you think?
All right, so parts of that. Here's a guy driven by ratings. I mean, to the point where he's counting every seat in every NFL stadium right now, and he's seeing those seats are down, and, hey, we're winning. I've made my case about the flag. That's not an honorable attention if you're talking about his ratings going up and NFL seats ratings going down. Look, a silver lining coming out of this, absolutely, but a planned silver lining stretches my imagination a little too far.
All right. And finally, this is really interesting, what's going on in Alabama.
Yes.
You have the president and vice president on one side, and you have Steve Bannon on the other side. What's going to happen there?
Well, the latest poll that came out has Roy Moore, the candidate that the president, vice president, Mitch McConnell are not supporting, pulling ahead. Roy Moore, a very controversial judge. We remember him from taking the 10 Commandments and putting them back up after it had been ordered that it was a violation of church and state. But Roy Moore leading as of yesterday by double digits again, and the election is very, very close. And so it looks like Bannon may win this one with backing growing more, and that the president, who is now the establishment, loses this one. It certainly looks like that. Luther Strange is this candidate.
And finally, healthcare. John McCain, Lindsey Graham in tears last night talking about John McCain as the president went after McCain on Twitter over the healthcare vote. Your final thoughts on that topic?
John McCain was a client of mine for years, and a honorable, decent man filled with integrity. And for Donald Trump to have said anything about him, those two shouldn't even be in the same room with each other. But with that said, repeal is dead. Whether this bill is going to go down, and I think they're going to talk about regrouping again. But the bottom line is that the GOP has no leadership, it has no unity, it has no plan, and it cannot get this passed because it also doesn't have public support on it. I've got a poll coming out in the next day or so that we did nationwide that clearly shows that Obamacare is more popular than it ever has been, and that folks do worry about millions of people being having their health care taken away.
Well, that becomes the conundrum here, right? Is that, and I think that this was part of the plan from the Obama administration. It is very similar to what happened with Medicare.
Yeah.
Is that once it becomes ingrained into society, it's going to be hard for people to give it up, and that's where we are right now.
That's exactly where we are now, and once you get, in this case, tens of millions of people, either through the expansion of Medicaid or in these exchanges, that's a whole new self-interest.
Yeah.
And people will vote for their self-interest.
Zogby Strategies. John Zogby, as always, we appreciate it. And I want to tell you right now, I already have the chip. I just want you to know it's already been installed in my brain. I'm not even connected to a computer physically. It's all right here.
Thanks. You're scaring the hell out of me. Thank you.
But, John, snap polling would be,
snap polling. Think about that. You just connect to the brain. You wouldn't even have to get the answer. You just automatically get the data. How about that?
Next time I see you, we'll do it.
Okay. All right. Good. John Zogby, Zogby Strategies.